The tiny high-end coffee shop hummed with the quiet drone of conversation, the clatter of porcelain cups and the gentle hiss of a milk steamer. For Emma, a woman who prided herself on being a meticulous planner and a calm, logical professional, it was a perfectly controlled environment. A place she could go to escape the chaos of her job and the even greater chaos of her family. But today the calm was a cruel lie. A small, sleek phone felt like a hot brick in her hand as her mother's voice, a sweet and sharp blade, cut through the noise. "Darling, I'm just so excited to see you at the reunion. You know your Aunt Susan will be asking about your prospects." Her mother's voice was filled with a practiced, passive-aggressive cheer. "And don't forget your cousin Brenda is bringing her new fiancé. You know, the one who is a doctor." Emma felt a knot of pure, unadulterated frustration tighten in her stomach. "Mom, I'm an independent woman. I'm a senior project manager. I don't need a man to be complete." Her words were a rehearsed defense, but they sounded hollow even to her. For years her family reunions had been a relentless, soul-crushing exercise in public humiliation. Every aunt, uncle, and distant cousin saw her as a broken puzzle, a successful career woman who was still tragically unmarried. A missing piece. "Of course you don't, honey," her mother said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "But you know how everyone is. They just want to see you happy. And a little ring on that finger would make you so happy. It would just silence all the whispers." The one thing Emma couldn't stand. The whispers about her being too career-focused, too picky, too independent. The whispers that would make this year's reunion just 2 short weeks away, a living nightmare. Desperation, hot and sharp, flared in her veins. She was a woman of logic and strategy. And her strategy right now was failing miserably. She needed a plan. And in a moment of sheer irrational panic, the words just flew out of her mouth. "Mom, stop. You don't have to worry about me. I have a fiancé." A beat of stunned, beautiful silence on the other end of the line. "You've what?" "Yes. We're getting married. He's very busy, of course, but he's coming to the reunion. With me. And my ring." The lies tumbled out of her mouth in a breathless, frantic torrent. The words felt real even to her. "I have to go, Mom. I'm sorry. I love you. I'll talk to you soon." She hung up before her mother could even process the news. She leaned back in her chair, a shaky, breathless laugh escaping her lips. What had she done? She was a woman of logic, not a madwoman who lied about a fiancé she didn't have. She had just bought herself 2 weeks of a terrifying, impossible lie. She needed a plan. A better one. One that involved an actual ring, an actual fiancé, and an actual plausible story. She just had to find one. She looked up and that's when she saw him. He was in the far corner of the cafe, a handsome, charismatic man with a tense, frustrated look on his face. He was on his phone, his jaw tight, his shoulders hunched in a posture of profound stress. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair and his voice, a low, smooth baritone, filled the quiet space. "Look, I told you. I'm not doing it. The arranged mating is off. Find someone else. I'm not marrying some random she-wolf I've never met just because you told me to. I'm telling you, I have a girlfriend. A human girlfriend. I'll bring her to the PAC meeting in a week and you can see for yourself. I am not interested in your forced unions." The words hung in the air, a series of phrases that mirrored her own desperate situation. The human girlfriend. Arranged mating. The man, this Jake, was in a situation that was absurdly, perfectly, comically like her own. He was a man who needed an alibi, an escape, a human face to show a world that was trying to control him. He had just offered her a job. She stood up, her legs feeling a little wobbly, and walked toward his table. He hung up the phone, a frustrated sigh leaving his lips. He looked up at her, his eyes, a piercing shade of green, filled with a mixture of anger and defeat. "I couldn't help but overhear," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I have a proposition for you." He just stared at her, his expression a perfect mixture of confusion and disbelief. "I need a fiancé," she said, her voice gaining a little bit of confidence. "Just for 2 weeks. My family reunion is in 2 weeks. I just told them I'm bringing a fiancé. I need a ring, a fake story, and a believable relationship. You need a fake human girlfriend to get out of an arranged mating." She let out a small, breathless laugh. "It seems we have a mutual problem." He stared at her for a long, silent moment, and a slow, beautiful smile spread across his face. A smile of pure, comedic relief. He stood up, his hand outstretched, his eyes twinkling. "I'm Jake," he said, his voice a low, smooth purr. "Emma," she said, and she took his hand. It was a silent, comedic agreement to a crazy plan. She had found her fiancé. And she had no idea that her perfect, logical life was about to be turned upside down by a very real werewolf. Chapter 1. Emma sat in a quiet, sun-drenched conference room, a stack of papers meticulously organized in a neat pile on the table in front of her. She was a woman who lived by a schedule, a woman whose life was a series of well-planned projects. But this was a project unlike any other. This was Project Fiancé, and it was the most absurd, ridiculous, and terrifying thing she had ever agreed to. Across the table, Jake was a picture of easy calm. He wore a simple, casual shirt, but his presence was anything but simple. He was charismatic and handsome, with a piercing gaze that seemed to see right through her. He was waiting. She had given him a time and a place, and he was there. He was punctual, and that was a good sign. "All right," Emma said, clearing her throat and pushing the stack of papers across the table. "This is the plan." Jake's eyes twinkled with a hint of amusement. "A plan. A very detailed plan," she said, her voice serious. "This is a business transaction. We need to be prepared. This isn't a game, Jake. It's my life." He just smiled, a slow, easy curve of his lips. "I understand. So what's on the docket?" "This," she said, tapping the 10-page plan with a neat, manicured finger. "This is our backstory. Our meet-cute. Our likes, our dislikes, our shared history. We need to get our story straight. You're an architect. You travel for work. It explains why we've been apart for so long." She flipped a page. "And this is a list of my family members. Their quirks, their hobbies, their most common questions. My Aunt Susan, for example, will ask about our future children. You need to have a good answer for that." Jake listened patiently, a small, amused smile on his face. He found her meticulousness hilarious. He was used to dealing with the wild, unpredictable nature of his pack, and this was a whole new level of control. He found it charming in a very weird human way. "And this," she said, flipping to a page with a series of photos. "This is a gallery of my ex-boyfriends. You need to know them all so you don't get confused when my family asks. And this is a list of our shared hobbies. We both love hiking. We have a shared love of camping. And we both have a shared love of reading. We're perfect for each other." Jake leaned back in his chair, a low, easy laugh leaving his lips. "Hiking, camping, reading. I am a werewolf. I run in the woods, I sleep on the ground, and I hunt. I don't hike or camp or read." Emma's face flushed. "Right. I thought it would be believable." He reached across the table and took her hand in his. His skin was warm and rough, and a small, surprising jolt went through her. His gaze, a piercing shade of green, seemed to see right through her. "Emma," he said, his voice a low, smooth purr. "We don't need a 10-page plan. We need to be believable. We need to be a team. We have a mutual problem and we're going to solve it together." His words, simple and direct, were more reassuring than her entire 10-page plan. She felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. He was right. They were a team. They were a pair of liars with a mutual problem, and they were going to solve it together. The absurdity of the situation, the sheer ridiculousness of it all, was starting to feel less terrifying and more exciting. "Okay," she said, her voice a little shaky. So what do? We practice, he said, a slow, easy smile spreading across his face. We spend time together. We get to know each other. We find a way to make this believable. It's an audition, Emma. And we're going to be perfect for each other. She just stared at him, her mind a whirlwind of frantic thoughts. He was a handsome, charismatic man who had just agreed to be her fake fiancé to get out of an arranged pack mating. He was a man with a strange, musky scent she found surprisingly intoxicating. He was a man whose eyes seemed to change color in the light. A man who could sense her emotions with an uncanny accuracy. He was a man who was going to be a part of her life for 2 weeks. And she had no idea that her worst match might just be her fated one. The deal was done. The lie had begun. And she had no idea that her perfect, logical life was about to be turned upside down by a very real werewolf. Chapter 2. The business deal was official. The 10-page plan was in hand. All that was left was for them to act like they were deeply in love. The task sounded simple enough in a sun-drenched conference room. It felt a whole lot more complicated in Emma's perfectly neat, perfectly tidy apartment. Her place was her sanctuary, a physical manifestation of her organized mind. Everything had its place. The bookshelves were alphabetized, the coffee mugs hung in a precise order, and a single perfectly groomed potted plant sat on the windowsill. The scent was clean, a mix of freshly laundered linen and a light, citrusy air freshener. It was a world of human control. Jake arrived with an easy smile, but his body was a coil of quiet, nervous energy. His eyes, a startling green, darted around the room, taking in every detail with an unnerving intensity. His nostrils flared almost imperceptibly as he took a deep, silent breath, as if cataloging every scent. He was in Emma's territory and his wolf was on high alert. "All right," Emma said, gesturing to the couch. "Let's run through the basics. We met at a friend's wedding." "Which friend?" Jake asked, his gaze fixed on the front door as if he expected an intruder. "My friend Jessica," Emma said, growing a little frustrated with his lack of focus. "Jessica and her husband, Mark." Jake's head tilted slightly, his ears, she noticed, twitching almost imperceptibly. "Is Mark a good guy?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah, he's great," Emma said. "Why?" "Just checking," he said, turning back to her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Gotta make sure my mate's friends are good people." The word mate hung in the air for a second, feeling both strange and electric. She chose to ignore it. "Right. So you're an architect." She started, but she was interrupted by a knock on the door. Jake's body went rigid. His eyes narrowed to a menacing slit and a low, guttural growl rumbled in his chest. "Whoa. Jake, what is it?" Emma said, her voice a nervous whisper. "It's the pizza guy," he said, his voice a low growl. "He's too close." "He's delivering our dinner," she said, trying to be a voice of reason. "He's not a threat." "He's in my space," Jake growled, his body tense, his hands balled into fists at his sides. Emma had to physically push him back and open the door herself, her cheeks burning with a deep, furious embarrassment. She paid the pizza guy, who was staring at Jake with wide, terrified eyes, and slammed the door shut. She turned to Jake, her hands on her hips. "What was that? You nearly got into a fight with the pizza delivery guy." He looked at her, his eyes apologetic. "I'm sorry," he said, the tension leaving his body as quickly as it had come. My territorial instincts are a little out of whack. It's a new place. I'm just getting used to it." The lie was a convenient excuse, and Emma, a woman of logic, chose to believe it. But the comedy of his wolf instincts had only just begun. The next day they were running lines in her apartment when Emma's vacuum cleaner, a loud, obnoxious thing, came to life. The moment the vacuum started its roar, Jake's body went rigid. His eyes darted around the room, his nostrils flaring as he tried to pinpoint the source of the noise. He let out a low, warning growl. "Jake, it's just a vacuum cleaner," Emma said, trying to keep a straight face. "It's a predator," he said, his voice a low hiss. It's trying to get into our space. Emma had to shut off the vacuum and physically push him into another room. The absurdity of the situation was hilarious, and a laugh escaped her lips, a free and easy sound. He looked at her, a small, embarrassed smile on his face. Sorry, he said. It's a lot. My senses, they're a little overdeveloped. The mix-ups continued, each one more ridiculous than the last. Her grandmother, a tiny, frail woman who had a penchant for floral perfume, called. The moment Emma picked up the phone, Jake's head snapped up. He let out a soft whine, his nose twitching. What is that? He asked, his voice a low whisper. That scent. It's overwhelming. Like a field of angry flowers. Emma had to put the phone on speaker and try to explain to her confused grandmother that she couldn't hear her over a very loud air freshener. She was living in a constant state of frantic comedic panic. Her life, which was once a neatly organized spreadsheet, had become a chaotic, hilarious mess. But amidst the chaos, a genuine, easy romance was beginning to blossom. The lies they had to tell, the elaborate excuses, the physical comedy of Jake's instincts. It all created a bond between them. They were in this together. They were a team. They had an easy banter, and their conversations flowed as if they had known each other for years. They shared a laugh, they shared a look, and they shared a secret that was more absurd than anything either of them had ever experienced. The line between their fake relationship and their real one was beginning to blur. And Emma, a woman who prided herself on being a meticulous planner, was starting to feel a real, terrifying, and exhilarating feeling for the man who nearly got into a fight with a pizza guy. The lie had begun, and it was becoming a lot more real than she ever thought possible. Chapter 3. The laughter from Emma's apartment was still a warm memory, but the easy comedy of Jake's antics was about to face the ultimate test, a public setting. It was one thing to nearly get into a fight with a vacuum cleaner. It was a whole other thing to do it in front of a horrified public. Their first task was to get him a suit. We have to look believable, Emma had insisted, her face a mask of professional seriousness. You have to look like a man who is about to marry a senior project manager, not a man who lives in the woods. They went to a high-end department store, a place of hushed tones and polished marble floors. The air was filled with the scents of expensive cologne and new fabric, a smell Jake found to be a strange and confusing mixture of chemicals and perfume. He was a creature of the wild, of earth and pine, and this place was a sensory nightmare. He was on high alert, his body a coiled spring. Okay, Emma said, holding up a sleek black suit jacket. This is a classic. It's a little snug, but I think it will look good. Jake took the jacket, and as he tried to put it on, a low, guttural growl escaped his lips. The fabric, a simple wool, felt rough and unnatural against his skin. His muscles, honed by a lifetime of running and fighting, were too big, too powerful for the delicate tailoring. He pulled on it, and the seams of the jacket groaned in protest. With a small ripping sound, a long tear appeared down the back. Emma's eyes widened. Oh. Maybe a bigger size. They went to the next size up and the next and the next. Each one met the same fate. Jake's wolf instincts were screaming at him to rip the clothes from his body, to feel the freedom of the air on his skin. He was a werewolf, a creature of the wild, and this human ritual of dressing up was a form of torture. He was a living, breathing testament to the fact that his body was not meant for a suit. He was a living, breathing testament to the fact that his body was not meant for a suit. The final one, a suit that was 2 sizes too big for a normal man, was still too tight. He put his hands on his hips in frustration, and the seams of the pants ripped with a long, satisfying tear. The sales associate, a tiny, nervous man, just stared, his face a mask of profound horror. We'll take it to the tailor, Emma said, trying to be a voice of reason. We'll get it fixed. He works out a lot. A lot. He's very strong. She shot Jake a look that clearly said stop doing that. He just shrugged, a small mischievous glint in his eyes. He found her frantic, hilarious excuses to be endlessly amusing. Their next stop was the jewelry store, a place of bright, blinding lights and glass cases filled with glittering jewels. The air was thick with the harsh scent of cleaning solutions and polished metal, a smell Jake found to be an assault on his senses. He wrinkled his nose in disgust, his nostrils flaring. The saleswoman, a perfectly coiffed woman with a bored expression, came to help them. She pulled out a tray of rings, and the scent of the chemicals on the metal made Jake's head spin. He let out a low, warning growl. "Oh, he has a very sensitive nose," Emma said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "He's very particular about his scents. He doesn't like that one." The saleswoman just stared at them, her face a mask of confusion. A pushy salesman, a man who seemed to reek of fake confidence and cheap cologne, came over to help. "Can I help you, ma'am? We have a special on our diamond rings." He was a little too close, a little too loud. Jake's wolf instincts, already on high alert, were screaming at him. He let out a low, guttural growl, his eyes, a piercing shade of green, narrowed to a menacing slit. "Whoa, whoa, whoa," the salesman said, backing away slowly, his face white with fear. Emma, in a moment of sheer frantic panic, grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him out of the store, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was a woman of logic, but this was a disaster. Her fake fiancé was a walking, talking, growling liability. The lies she had to tell, the elaborate excuses, it was all getting out of control. They ended up at a small, unassuming jewelry store on a quiet side street. The shop was old and smelled of antique wood and the gentle scent of old lace. It was a place of quiet history and peace. The owner, a kind, elderly woman with a warm smile, showed them a tray of simple, elegant rings. Jake's body, which had been so tense, began to relax. The peaceful scent of the shop was a balm to his senses. He looked at Emma, and a genuine smile spread across his face. He took a simple, elegant silver ring from the tray and put it on her finger. It wasn't a diamond. It wasn't flashy. But it was perfect. The silver looked beautiful against her skin, and for a fleeting moment she saw the reality behind their fake engagement. She wasn't just getting a ring for a fake reunion. She was getting a ring from a man who was proving to be everything she never knew she wanted. "It's perfect," he said, his voice a low, smooth purr. Emma looked at him, and her heart did a strange, impossible flip. The line between their fake relationship and their real one had officially blurred. They had survived a series of hilarious, chaotic mix-ups. They had survived a trip to a jewelry store. They had survived a shopping trip. They had survived it all. And in the middle of it all, they had found something real. A connection that was deeper and more authentic than any fake relationship they could have ever planned. The comedy was a catalyst for their genuine feelings. The chaos was a forge that was turning their fake relationship into a real one. They were a team, and they had a ring to prove it. Chapter 4. The easy laughter of their shopping trip was a distant memory. Now Emma felt a different kind of tension building in her stomach as they stood in the lobby of a high-end restaurant. The air, thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the hushed tones of polite conversation, was the complete opposite of the quiet simplicity of the daily grind. This was a whole new level of test run, a public performance where one wrong move could unravel everything. "Just remember the plan," Emma whispered, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Smile. Look at me like you're in love. Don't growl at anyone." Jake just smiled, a slow, easy curve of his lips. "I'll do my best." They were led to their table, a cozy corner booth, and as they settled in, Emma felt a small sense of relief. But the relief was short-lived. Across the room she saw a face she had hoped to never see again. Dirk, her ex-boyfriend. He was with a group of friends, his face a mask of his usual smug arrogance. She instinctively tensed. "Who's that?" Jake asked, his voice low. His body, which had been relaxed just a moment ago, was now a coiled spring. "An ex," Emma whispered, a single word filled with a century of frustration. Derek saw them and with a knowing smirk he made his way over to their table. "Emma," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Fancy seeing you here. You're looking well. Who's this?" His eyes, a cold, empty blue, swept over Jake, a subtle gesture of dismissal. Before Emma could even respond, Jake's wolf instincts took over. His body went rigid and a low guttural growl so quiet it was barely a sound rumbled in his chest. His eyes, a piercing shade of green, narrowed to a menacing slit. "He's my fiancé," Jake said, his voice a low, terrifying growl. "And I don't appreciate your tone." Derek just stared, his face a mask of shock. "Wow, someone's possessive," he said, trying to regain his composure. He turned to Emma, a mocking smile on his face. "Looks like you found yourself a real alpha." He said the word with a subtle, condescending twist. Jake's body tensed. "Get out of here, human," he said, his voice a low, dangerous hiss. He was a werewolf, a creature of the wild, and this human with his smug arrogance was a direct challenge to his authority. Emma, in a moment of sheer frantic panic, kicked him hard under the table. "He's just joking," she said, her voice a little too loud. He's a little protective. He's very territorial." She shot Jake a look that clearly said, "Stop doing that." He just shrugged, a small, mischievous glint in his eyes. Derek, seeing the look in Jake's eyes and sensing the cold, simmering rage beneath the surface, backed away slowly. "Right. Well, nice meeting you," he said, his voice a little shaky. "Looks like you have your hands full." He gave a nervous laugh and walked away, his face pale with fear. The crisis had been averted, but the comedy of their situation had only just begun. As they were ordering their drinks, another familiar face appeared. Aunt Susan. The judgmental, gossipy aunt who was the reason for all this. She was with a group of her own friends, all of them judging everyone in the room. She saw Emma and her eyes widened. She made a beeline for their table, a triumphant smile on her face. "Emma," she said, her voice a loud, saccharine thing. "I heard a rumor you brought a man to a restaurant. And you're wearing a ring. Is it a real ring?" Jake's body tensed, and his hand instinctively went to the small silver ring he had put on her finger. His wolf instincts were screaming at him. This woman, with her loud voice and judgmental eyes, was a threat. She was a threat to his mate's happiness. He let out a low, guttural growl. "Oh, no," Emma said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. He has a little tic. He gets nervous. We're just trying to relax." She shot Jake a frantic look that clearly said, "Do something." Jake, with a small, apologetic smile, took her hand in his. He was a natural actor, and his eyes, a piercing shade of green, held a profound sense of love and adoration. He looked at Aunt Susan, and his gaze was steady and unwavering. "It's a very real ring," he said, his voice a low, smooth purr. "And it's a very real commitment. She's a very real woman." Aunt Susan, flustered and confused by his quiet confidence, just stared at them. She was a woman who was used to getting her way, but this man, this stranger, had just called her out in public. She was a woman who was used to making people uncomfortable, but he had just made her feel small. She gave a small, defeated nod and walked away, her face a mask of fury. The two of them sat in a stunned, grateful silence. The laughter they shared over the absurdity of it all was a real, beautiful thing. They had survived a series of hilarious, chaotic mix-ups. They had survived a confrontation with her ex-boyfriend. They had survived a confrontation with her judgmental aunt. And in the middle of it all, they had found something real. A connection that was deeper and more authentic than any fake relationship they could have ever planned. The line between their fake relationship and their real one was officially blurring. And Emma, a woman who prided herself on being a meticulous planner, was starting to feel a real, terrifying, and exhilarating feeling for the man who was a walking, talking, growling liability. She had a feeling their worst match might just be their fated one. The next step was a road trip to a reunion with her whole family. And she had no idea what to expect. Chapter 5. The laughter of the restaurant was a distant echo, replaced by the low, steady hum of Emma's sedan. The open road stretched out before them, a long ribbon of blacktop that cut through the changing scenery. The city lights of Havenwood were now a faint glow in the rearview mirror, and the world was just them, a small car and a whole lot of empty space. The long hours in the car with nothing but the low hum of the engine and the quiet of their thoughts was the final and most intimidating test of their fake relationship. The first hour was a masterpiece of awkward silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy and suffocating. Emma, a woman of meticulous plans, had a list of conversation topics in her head, but they all felt ridiculous in this setting. She fiddled with the radio, her fingers dancing over the buttons, trying to find a station that could fill the void. He just stared out the window, his profile a study in quiet contemplation. The emotional baggage from the restaurant was still there, a ghost in the car with them, a quiet reminder of the danger and chaos of their situation. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "Your aunt. She really doesn't like you." His voice was a low, dry chuckle. Emma felt herself relax. The absurdity of it all was a comfort. She doesn't like anyone. She thinks everyone is a disappointment. I've been her special project since I was 10. She's been trying to get me to date a man who is a doctor, a lawyer, a CEO, a man who is more. Jake just nodded, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Sounds familiar. The words were simple, but they carried a weight of their own. She knew, without him saying it, that his family had a similar set of expectations. He was an alpha, and his destiny was a pre-written story, a duty to his pack. He was supposed to marry a she-wolf, a leader, a mate who was as powerful and as traditional as he was. A woman of logic and spreadsheets was not in the plan. The quiet understanding that passed between them was a powerful, beautiful thing. They were two people from two very different worlds, burdened by the same set of expectations. As the hours passed, the silence became more comfortable. They talked about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. They shared stories about their families, about the things that made them laugh, and about the things that kept them up at night. Emma told him about her love of spreadsheets, of the quiet satisfaction she found in solving a complex problem. He listened intently, a genuine, interested look on his face. He told her about his love of the wild, of the feeling of running free, of the silent, powerful strength of his family. He didn't mention his werewolf nature. He just spoke of his instincts, of the way his senses were always on high alert, of the way he felt a deep, profound connection to the earth. She listened, fascinated, her logical mind trying to make sense of the beautiful, illogical world he was describing. They sang along to the radio, their voices a little off-key, their laughter a real and easy thing. They shared a bag of chips and a can of soda, their fingers brushing as they reached for the same thing. The long hours in the car, with nothing but the road and their words, was a forge that was turning their fake relationship into a real one. The line between their fake relationship and their real one was now completely gone. They were no longer two people in a business deal. They were a team. They were friends. They were something more. The sun began to set, painting the sky in a vibrant mixture of orange and pink. The world outside the car was a beautiful, cinematic blur. They were two people on a long road heading toward a future they couldn't control. They were two people who had found a connection that was deeper and more authentic than either of them could have imagined. They were a pair of liars with a mutual problem, and they were going to solve it together. The car rattled to a stop and Jake turned off the engine. They were here. At the family reunion. The quiet intimacy of the car was replaced by the noise and chaos of 100 family members, all of them waiting to meet Emma's fiancé. The laughter, the noise, the pressure, it all hit her like a physical blow. Her heart pounded in her chest. She was no longer just Emma. She was the woman who had brought her fiancé home. And she had no idea what to expect. She just knew that the man sitting beside her, the man who was her worst match, might just be her fated one. Chapter 6. The quiet intimacy of the car was a distant memory. The moment Emma and Jake stepped out, they were engulfed in a chaotic explosion of family. The air was thick with the scent of 100 different perfumes and colognes, the noise a deafening roar of laughter, chatter, and overlapping conversations. It was a high-stakes performance, and they were the main event. Emma felt her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was a meticulous planner, a senior project manager who thrived on control, but this was pure chaos. She was surrounded by a sea of familiar faces, all of them waiting to meet the man who had supposedly won her heart. The pressure was immense. But Jake was a picture of easy calm. He was not a nervous human. He was an alpha who was used to social dynamics and leading. He put a warm, reassuring hand on the small of her back, and his presence, a solid and unwavering thing, was a powerful comfort. He was a natural charmer, and his smile, a slow, easy curve of his lips, was a weapon he knew how to use. He navigated the crowd with an easy confidence, shaking hands, making small talk, and answering a series of absurd questions. "He's very quiet," one cousin observed. "He's very handsome," another whispered. "Does he have a job?" a great-uncle asked with a knowing, judgmental look. Jake, with a charming smile, answered every question with a patient, easy grace. He was a natural. He was winning them over. The family, who had been judging Emma for years, was now looking at her with a new kind of respect. She had found a good man. A perfect man. A man who was everything her family had ever wanted for her. The comedy of the situation was in full swing, a series of hilarious mix-ups that only they knew about. Her Aunt Susan, the judgmental aunt who was the source of all this, made her way over to them, a triumphant smile on her face. "Well, Emma," she said, her voice a loud, saccharine thing, "it looks like you finally found a man who has a job. He's very quiet, isn't he? Is he a lawyer?" "He looks like a lawyer." Before Emma could even respond, Jake's wolf instincts took over. His body, which had been relaxed just a moment ago, was now a coiled spring. He let out a low, guttural growl, a sound so quiet it was barely a sound, but a sound so terrifying that Aunt Susan's face went white with fear. He was a natural charmer, but his wolf was a powerful, protective force, and it was screaming at him to protect his fated mate from this judgmental, loud woman. Emma, in a moment of sheer, frantic panic, kicked him hard under the table. He's a little nervous," she said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "He gets a little overwhelmed in crowds." She shot him a look that clearly said, "Stop doing that." He just shrugged, a small, mischievous glint in his eyes. The comedy of the situation was a constant low-level buzz in the background. His protective instincts were on overdrive. He physically moved her out of the way when a clumsy cousin nearly bumped her. He growled at a loud, obnoxious man who was talking too close to her ear. The family, watching these quirks, just smiled. They didn't see a man who was fighting his instincts. They saw a man who was deeply devoted to their daughter. They saw a man who was willing to protect her. They saw a man who was her knight in shining armor. Amidst the chaos, the family was falling in love with Jake. He was charming. He was handsome. He was protective. He was everything they had ever wanted for her. And for the first time in her life, Emma felt a sense of pride. She had not only found a man who loved her, she had found a man who was her home. He was a man who was a part of a world she didn't understand, but he was a man who was her fated mate. The lie they had been living was now a beautiful, terrifying truth. The day was a blur of laughter, chaos, and a series of elaborate excuses. They danced, they ate, they laughed. They were the perfect couple, the perfect lie. The family, who had been a source of so much pain, was now a source of pure, unadulterated joy. For Emma, it was a moment of profound, breathtaking happiness. She had not only found a man who loved her, but she had found a family who loved him. The night was coming to an end, and Emma felt a sense of profound contentment. The reunion had been a success. But as she looked at Jake, her heart a tangled mess of joy and fear. She knew the lie was about to become a truth. They were in love. And she knew that the time for hiding was over. The time for the truth had come. The next morning she was going to tell him how she felt. And she had no idea what to expect. She just knew that her worst match might just be her fated one. Chapter 7. The loud, chaotic symphony of the reunion was a distant echo. The sounds of laughter and music were replaced by the low sound of the crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves in the cool night air. Emma and Jake had found a quiet porch, a secluded sanctuary away from the prying eyes of her family. The moonlight, soft and white, was a blanket over them, and the atmosphere was a gentle, romantic thing. Emma felt a new kind of nervousness, a more profound kind than the one she had felt during the reunion. Her heart was pounding, a wild, frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was a woman of logic, but her heart was in charge now. The lies she had been living, the elaborate excuses, the hilarious mix-ups, it was all gone. It was just her and him. And she had to tell him the truth. Her truth. She turned to him, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Jake," she said, her voice a low, shaky whisper. "I have to tell you something." He just looked at her, his eyes, a piercing shade of green, filled with a quiet, knowing look. He had a way of seeing right through her, of seeing the truth beneath the surface. His gaze was a silent, calming thing, and it gave her the courage she needed. She started, and a small, nervous laugh escaped her lips. "I lied. About the fiancé. About all of it. There's no one. I was desperate. My family, they're a lot. They just wanted me to be happy. And I said the first thing that came to my mind. I'm so sorry. I know this was supposed to be a business deal, a simple transaction. I just wanted a way out. I'm so sorry." She waited for him to get angry. She waited for him to leave. She waited for him to tell her that she was a crazy, ridiculous woman who had just lied about her love life. But he just smiled, a slow, easy curve of his lips. "I know, Emma," he said, his voice a low, smooth purr. "I knew the moment I saw you. You were a woman on a mission. A woman who was desperate for a way out." His words, simple and direct, were a powerful, emotional blow. He had seen her desperation and he hadn't judged her. He had seen her need for an escape and he hadn't left. He had seen the truth and he had chosen to be a part of it. I have to tell you something else," she said, her voice a little more confident. I think I'm falling in love with you, Jake." The words, which had felt so terrifying just moments ago, were now a simple, beautiful truth. They hung in the air, a silent, powerful thing that was 1,000 times more real than any lie she had ever told. She looked at him, her heart in her throat, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. She had just given him her heart. She had just given him her soul. Jake's body, which had been so relaxed just a moment ago, now a coiled spring. His eyes, a piercing shade of green, narrowed to a menacing slit. His nostrils flared, taking in her scent. The truth of her confession, the honesty of her words, was a powerful, intoxicating thing. His wolf instincts, honed for a life of honest, powerful emotion, were screaming at him. She was his fated mate. The woman who was meant to be with him. The woman he was destined to be with. He had to tell her. He had to tell her the truth. He had to tell her who he was. But he couldn't. His wolf instincts were at war with his human side. He was a werewolf. A powerful shifter. A dangerous creature of the wild. He was a man who lived in a world of rules and tradition. A man who was supposed to marry a she-wolf. A leader. A mate who was as powerful and as traditional as he was. A woman of logic and spreadsheets was not in the plan. He was a man who lived a secret life. A man who was burdened by a legacy he couldn't share. What would she do if she knew the truth? Would she run? Would she be afraid? The thought was a painful, crippling thing. He looked at her, and his face was a mask of pure, unadulterated pain. He was a man who was in love and he was terrified. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to tell her everything. But he couldn't. He was a werewolf and he was a man who was in love. He was in a situation that was completely out of his control. He had to make a choice. A final, terrifying, heart-wrenching choice. Would he risk everything by revealing his secret and facing the consequences? Or would he lose her forever? The decision was not a simple one. It was a choice that would change his life, his pack, his entire world. The emotional climax was at its peak. The tension was an unbearable living thing. And the only thing he knew for sure was that he was in love. And he was terrified. He had to make a choice. And he had to do it now. The time for the truth had come. And he had no idea what he was going to do. Chapter 8. The silence on the porch was a living, breathing thing. The crickets were quiet, the leaves were still. The world was holding its breath, waiting for Jake to speak. His eyes, a piercing shade of green, were locked on Emma, and his face was a mask of pure, unadulterated pain. He had a choice to make, a choice that would change his life, his pack, his entire world. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to tell her everything. But he was terrified. And then his wolf, a powerful protective force that was a part of his soul, took over. It sensed her honesty, her love, her vulnerability. It knew he couldn't lie to her. He couldn't. His body, a powerful coiled spring, began to move. His eyes, which had been so green, began to change, a flash of gold appearing in their depths. His teeth, which had been so straight and white, began to sharpen. He took her hand in his grip a little too tight, a little too strong. "Emma," he said, his voice a low, gravelly thing. I have to tell you something. I'm a werewolf." The words, which had felt so impossible just moments ago, were now a simple, beautiful truth. He waited for her to run. He waited for her to scream. He waited for her to be afraid. But she just stared at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. I know," she said, her voice a low, shaky whisper. I figured it out. The growling, the super strength. I'm a woman of logic, but I'm also a woman who can see when something is not right." She paused, her mind a whirlwind of frantic thoughts. I just needed to hear you say it." Her words, simple and direct, were a powerful, emotional blow. He had expected her to run, to be afraid, to be disgusted. He had expected her to be a human, a creature of a house who would run from a monster. But she was a woman of logic, and she had chosen to believe in the impossible. She had chosen to believe in him. He told her everything. He told her about his family, a powerful ancient pack. He told her about his father, the Alpha, and the arranged mating he had been running from. He told her the reason he had agreed to her crazy plan was to find a way out, a way to escape a future that he didn't want. He told her that he was a powerful shifter, a creature of the wild, and he told her the lie he had been living, a lie he had been forced to live. He had been born to lead, but he had been running from his destiny, and in his desperation he had found her. He watched her, his heart a tangled mess of fear and love. He had been so afraid of losing her, but she was right there. She wasn't running. She wasn't afraid. She was looking at him with a look of profound, breathtaking love. Her love, which had started as a lie, was now their most precious truth. I don't care," she said, her voice a low, gentle thing. "You're a werewolf. I'm a human. You're a powerful creature of the wild, and I'm a woman who loves spreadsheets. It's okay. It's our story. It's our happy ending." Her words were a final, beautiful validation of everything he had ever felt. He had not only found a woman who loved him, but he had found a woman who accepted him. He had found a woman who saw him for who he truly was, a powerful, beautiful creature who was both wolf and human. He had chosen to love her not in spite of his secret but because of it. The silence that settled over them was a new kind of quiet, a quiet born of understanding and love. The lies were gone. The secret was out. They were together and their love was real. They had not only found each other, they had found a new kind of home, a new kind of pack, a new kind of family. And it was beautiful. The reunion was over. The battle was over. The war was over. And the peace that settled over them was a new kind of quiet, a quiet born of understanding and love. The story was over. But their story was just beginning. Epilogue. A few months had passed since the chaotic reunion, and Emma and Jake were now living a life that was even stranger and more beautiful than they could have ever planned. Their fake relationship was gone, replaced by a very real, very funny, and very magical life. The lies were gone, and the truth was a powerful, beautiful thing that was all theirs. The story was over, but their story was just beginning. They were a team, a perfect blend of two worlds. Emma's home, once a neat and tidy sanctuary of logic, was now filled with the wild, earthy scent of Jake. Her spreadsheets, once a meticulous record of her projects, now had a new section for werewolf pack meetings, and she found herself enjoying the quiet, powerful strength of his family. The comedy of their situation was a constant low-level buzz in the background. His wolf instincts, once a source of frantic embarrassment, were now a constant source of love and amusement. He would still growl at the mailman, but Emma would just laugh and give him a kiss. He would still tense up at loud noises, but Emma would just take his hand and give him a reassuring squeeze. His quirks, which her family had once found so strange, were now a sign of his love. The final scene shows Emma's family visiting for a casual dinner. The judgmental aunt, who had been a source of so much pain, was there, and she was watching Jake with a newfound respect. When a small dog barked from a nearby yard, Jake's body, which had been so relaxed, tensed. A low, protective growl rumbled in his chest, a sound that was so quiet it was barely a sound. The family, who had once been so terrified of his power, just smiled. "Oh, he's so protective," one of her cousins said with a quiet, appreciative laugh. "He's just like a dog." Jake just looked at Emma, a small, mischievous glint in his eyes. He had a secret that was now a part of their story. The family had not only accepted him, but they had embraced him. They had not only accepted his quirks, but they had found them charming. The two of them, a woman of spreadsheets and a powerful wolf, had found a way to make their two worlds one. They were a real couple, a real family, a real love. And it was all because of a fake story that was, in the end, their most beautiful truth. What do you think? Would you have risked everything to tell the one you love your deepest secret? Let me know in the comments below. If you love this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, because I have many more exciting werewolf romance stories waiting for you. Ring the notification bell so you never miss my next story. Thank you for watching.